Welcome to our Mobile Revolutionary series, where we share stories, tips, and trends about all things mobile from industry thought leaders and practitioners. Today's topic will be about how to modernize customer service operations to deliver real customer happiness. We're excited to have Andrea Schmidt here. She's the VP of Campaign Operations at Quotient, which is the company that you might know of as Coupons.com, amongst other things. They are a US-based omni-channel digital marketing leader for retailers and advertisers. So, like many customer service practices, Quotient's journey to automation began at a common starting point: email. In the world of consumer digital products and services, email might feel a bit antiquated for today's mobile consumers, such as Quotient's shoppers. When Andrea first took on the challenge of modernizing customer service operations at Quotient, she knew there had to be a better way. She's here to share that story with us. Welcome to our show, Andrea.
Thanks, Janice. Excited to be here and share a little bit more about our journey and the approach that I took, as well as as an organization, to really leverage technology to provide best-in-class service and experience for our customers.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning, because you actually didn't come from the world of customer service operations, right? Let our audience hear a little bit about your background and what you do. What are all the things that you do at Quotient today?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is actually in early childhood education. So I thought that I was going to be a preschool teacher, but I actually have never taught. I went through, once I graduated, did an internship, and took a summer position at GE and never left there. So I was there for 13 years. Wearing various hats, but dabbled my feet in, the global space and overseeing, a global team, whether it was, in China or in Bangalore, or various other countries too. So, and then I've been with Quotient now for just about 5 years, so a little under 5 years. And I currently have the pleasure of overseeing our global campaign operations team. I've got about 220 people supporting about 14 different areas of our business. And as you mentioned, I've got it kind of sprinkled throughout the US. So I've got a team here in Cincinnati, as well as in California and New York, and a couple remote. And then I've got a pretty large team in our Bangalore office too.
Got it. And so when you think about who you service, you actually have different constituents, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to kind of give a little bit of background, I think will help to, as we continue this discussion in terms of, what we have been looking to change and to elevate in terms of the service that we provide. We definitely do have, different service that we are providing to either our consumers, and that's, the coupons and the offerings that we are providing to save money. And also then, partnering with our advertisers or CPGs, consumer packaged goods, and retailers to drive sales and provide, more valuable outcomes for them. So I think just to kind of take a step back, just to understand, and I think this will help with some context too, just in terms of the team that I oversee. In the world of shopping as we know it has changed drastically over the last several years, but really in the last year. And Quotient has been, kind of at the forefront and leading that transformation, and with our vision and purpose, which is really to transform shopping to make life better for shoppers. And the way that we're doing that is, partnering with our advertisers and our retailers. So in terms of my team, and I mentioned that we've got, got a pretty large team overseeing different functions, but really starts, once that sale happens, and my team is responsible for that flawless execution, working directly with clients to execute campaigns that they were to meet their, specific objectives. But then also on the other side, after the campaign launches, it really comes full circle and working with a separate part, different part of my team which is my consumer happiness team, which is kind of more relative to the topics that we're going to be sharing today, and how, we were currently engaging with our users, how we were supporting them, and really the drastic need to disrupt that and provide a more modern digital solution for our users.
Yeah. So if we think about your users today versus, who they may have been even a decade ago, one of the things that we obviously care a whole lot about are those users who are mostly mobile now. They do everything in the app, if not on the web. And so they're, from HelpShift's observations, we definitely see a change in expectations and user demand on how fast they get help, how quickly, how convenient, how friendly, because there's a lot of choice out there nowadays. What are you seeing on the retail side? You're dealing with shoppers who are online, on the go. Do you see certain patterns of expectations that have caused you to think about why go on this journey of modernization now?
Absolutely. And I think, we have a mixture of, of users, that we still have, people who just want to use the web. We have people who still want to just print coupons. A lot of people who still just want to print coupons. But, something that Quotient and we have been very dedicated to kind of leading that charge for even pre-COVID, was moving away from paperless coupons. And COVID helped that, right? Because a lot of places now and a lot of retailers aren't accepting paper coupons. So that's a dynamic shift for our users too. But again, being, already kind of planning for that, and for the kind of end of life of those printed home coupons. We still obviously still offer that, but it is that dynamic shift. It is the shift of e-com space now, and just the online ordering and everything that is driving a change for how we shop and how retailers are engaging with their customers, and how CPGs are interacting with their customers. And so I think that was something too that as we, increased and improved our technology and our product offerings, something that really always stood out for me. When I joined Quotient 5 years ago, I didn't oversee the consumer happiness team. I took them over probably about a year and a half into joining. And so I wasn't as informed in terms of what that experience was. The app was, was up and running. We were still just providing email support to our users. So as I was learning this, and as a sophisticated, technology-driven, data-driven company, was very surprised that our level of customer service didn't match and mirror kind of what we are providing, not only to our shoppers and to our users, from a product offering perspective, and then to our clients in terms of the multitude of ways to reach our shoppers, right? Whether it's through targeted offers, location data, all of these different ways that we have the ability to engage and reach shoppers throughout the shopping experience and that path to purchase. But then there was kind of that stopgate that it once a user would have a challenge or an issue or a question, it was a very different experience. And so for me, and what I, kind of fought for and made sure to bring to the forefront was really to elevate that service that we were providing and make sure that it did mirror, the technology and our offerings that we're offering to our clients and to our users.
Got it. So you recognize that the way that you were providing services and support didn't live up to the modern services that you were actually, delivering to your shoppers and your retailers. And it sounds like you recognized an opportunity to do a lot more with the data that you had access to. So when you decided to go on this journey, what areas did you start at first? Because I can imagine, think about it, right? Any time you're trying to implement this kind of change, it's a process change, it's a behavior change, It's a behavior and mindset. It's a tool set change. And if there is no data, it's also a data change, because then you got to start collecting the data. Where did you start?
I started very simple. I honestly took a step back and really asked myself and my team, how do we like to be supported? We are in this digital, fast-paced world where, we want things yesterday and not tomorrow. And I am an avid shopper, and whether it's online or in store, I like it all. But I also value customer service and support. And so did some research of, what's out there and looking at different ways. And obviously there's frustrations, right? As a consumer or as a user, I wanted to make sure that we were rolling out the right solution. And especially because, again, our audience varies. We have people who, aren't using an app or don't even have, aren't familiar with all the technology of iPhones and the whole digital world. Again, those users who like to print their coupons. So how do we still retain and engage with them, but also work to convert them and support them throughout that transition? But then also the more tech savvy users, then how can we reach them faster, more effective, and then have the data to support it, right? So it wasn't just looking at how can we provide this real-time support that we did not have in place. It was also making sure that we had the data to continue to make improvements and to unlock insights that previously we did not have. We were manually pulling reports, looking at the different types of issues that we were coming in, resolution time. So having a centralized, system and platform to manage all of our inquiries, to match, again, the incredible, hardworking, dedicated team that I have also on the front lines supporting our users and really looking to transform their role too, and not having to have some of these very simple, how do I print a coupon or how do I access certain information, or what's the status of my rebate, really taking it to that next level to meet the user's needs and let them continue, within that, whether it's on the web or within the app, within that experience, to keep them engaged, to keep them there, and using our products.
Got it. So, okay. So let me piece together what I heard, which I love. You started with the user or the customer in mind first, and you walked in their shoes and you took your team through that exercise so that they could see and start to understand what is the experience currently like versus what should it be like, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think I heard you say the second part of that was, okay, now that we know what the experience should be like, what data do we need in order to deliver that experience? And it could be data that tells us a little bit more about them as a shopper, maybe their patterns, maybe their previous transactions, maybe their previous issues. But it's that data that then arms your support team, your service team, with the skills and the tools that they need in order to deliver that experience that you envisioned.
Absolutely. And I think, Janice, it's even a little bit more than that it's a more holistic view, that it's not just a case coming in, right? The way that we were supporting our users and our customers before, it was, a case number. And if we had some people that like to reach out to us a lot, and unfortunately in this line of business, people aren't knocking down our door or submitting inquiries to tell us how amazing we are and how much they love our product or our offerings or anything like that, right? They're having an issue, they're frustrated. And so we want to make sure that it's not just, that it wasn't just a number, that we could see holistically the overall experience, the challenges that they've had before, to not only resolve them then, but then also to take it further, work, cross-functionally with our product or engineering or marketing or wherever we needed to be working with our retailers if it was an issue with an offer or with redemption or anything like that. So that going forward, again, we've resolved it, but we also have the trust and the loyalty of that customer as well, so that they are coming back and engaging with us. So I think that was, that was something that was key too, and having that data And we're in the early stages of this, right? So we just left this whole email only communication. It feels like much longer ago, but it's only about 5 months, a little over 5 months, that since we have, rolled out the HelpShift platform and solution. So we're still in the early phases, and we had to make a lot of decisions so that we were able to launch when we did. And I think that, when I look at the benefits that we're seeing in a very short period of time, but then also kind of long-term where we're hoping to be, we were able to roll out this real-time support model, having that automated FAQs and just a modern digital way to engage with our users with chat and with these different functionalities. But we're not quite there yet, right? We still have a long way to go. But it was kind of a race to the finish line. We had to launch before we launched our new app, and that was critical for us. And I think that was something that it took some time to identify the provider that we wanted to move forward with. And I felt like we had a very good understanding in terms of what our strategic initiatives were, what our objectives were, and what we needed to be able to successfully elevate and change the experience with our users to provide them that new way of support.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit, your objectives, because it sounds like you outlined them in advance and said, here are the goals, here's the objectives, why we're doing it, here are the goals. And your from state was you were in a world of primarily email and phone. And that's how you were delivering support and services. And you knew you needed to get to a place that was more automated, faster, probably higher volume, because the business was growing. Mm-hmm. So for our audience who's probably thinking about going on a similar journey, how do I do better than email? How do I not have to get users to call me because users don't prefer to, right, if they can avoid it? Did you start with, okay, let me open up another channel? So for instance, let me focus on self-service because that was the first lowest hanging fruit. Or did you go direct to, let me open up chat, or let me, messaging, or let me open up, automated ways to resolve? What can you tell us about the steps that you took?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in terms of what we were looking to achieve came down to really, 4 things. It was real-time support. We needed a scalable support model. We knew that our volumes were going to skyrocket in terms of just the completely new user experience within our app, as well as our new product offerings. And we also needed data. We needed to know what was working, what was not. And to be able to leverage and pull all those different levers to make meaningful changes. So, we had different KPIs, we had different ways that we knew that how we wanted to achieve this. But we had to start small. So we did just start with launching more of a self-serve model. So pushing FAQs to users who are coming in, and really targeting the ones first that we knew were relatively simple to solve, that we know that, myself included, I don't want to go navigate through a help page and try to find the FAQ that's going to resolve my issue and read through it. And I know that our users probably think that same way. However, if we have that within a chat experience, helping to resolve that quickly in real time, or if not, they still have the option to engage with us. The other thing too that's important is that, as I mentioned, we were under a very tight timeline. So by the time we signed our agreement, the time that we launched was just a couple of months. And with any new product and implementation and system integration, not everything can happen at once and within that short period of time. So we had to make some concessions. And one of those concessions was not the in-app experience. So we rolled this out with web and have kind of a redirect from the app to the web experience. So, the users don't necessarily know that, but we are definitely not maximizing and optimizing that in-app experience that we're looking to achieve, to keep our users there engaged, and then eventually to, layer in live chat, potentially additional languages, because it's a lot of the feedback that we've heard from our users too. And so there's definitely a lot of things that are either in progress right now, that we continue to work towards to improve that in-app experience for our users, but also to be able to make things easier on our side. I mean, I think some of the biggest benefits and opportunities that we saw when all of a sudden, we went from a couple hundred cases a day to several thousand cases, to be supported by 10 agents supporting these cases. So it was not scalable, but we were able to push notifications. We were able to do bulk updates. A lot of things that, to be honest, I didn't even know existed until we were kind of in the throes of it. And where we are now is, before we were just trying to keep up and keep our head above water. But now that we're in a much more manageable state, looking forward to, being able to leverage more of the functionality, so that it's not only from the Quotient side that notices the difference in the technology that we're integrating, and if we're pulling in APIs for user data, but the overall user experience. And again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that's been the focus, and this journey is to get us to that point.
That's awesome. It's like, I sound like I'm in the cockpit listening to you. So I think there were a couple takeaways there. One was, because you had this really compelling event where you were launching a new app. You said, let's crawl and walk before we run, starting with optimizing the self-service experience. Was there any automation involved in that just yet?
Just the bots? No, no. There was just the bot automation, FAQs, things like that. That was it.
Got it. So you started there, and then you said, okay, whatever it is that we do when we launch this app and they needed support, let's support them through a browser-based experience first. And then I assume it's because you want to get the app in market, sort of battle tested, before you go in and layer in that in-app help experience. Well,
it was just that our engineering team was heads down, focused on making sure that our app was rolling out in their best experience too. So we obviously needed, the partnership on both sides. And so again, it was more important for us to be able to have something live prior to our app new release. As opposed to waiting to be able to roll it out with a full in-app experience.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, so that's kind of the front end, right? The front end of like what do the users get now versus what they had before, which was primarily email and phone support. On the back end for the agents, what were you able to advance there for them in terms of leveraging the automation? Like, what did that look like for them? For your 10 agents to scale to meet the volume of issues that were coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. Very different. And I think that this was an exercise that while, the integration and the launch of this new platform was within a couple months, something that we had been preparing for months. So really looking at the FAQs that we had, that while we revisit them often to make changes and updates, really doing a massive overhaul to make sure that regardless of the new app and kind of new functionality and product offerings, but that it was concise, and that, when we were launching this new digital way to engage with our users, that our messaging and our help documentation matched that too, and so that it was streamlined. To make it simpler for them too. So also looking at the platform that we were using previously through email, we had templates, we had thousands of templates, and while many of them were probably not used for a very long time, being able to purge that and really start fresh and have Again, as I mentioned, really changing and transforming that agent role and having them be a part of this process to, they're the eyes and the ears of what our users are saying and hearing. I sometimes only hear it if things escalate up, but they know what's working. What are the pain points? And so really making sure that that was factored into our overall support process too, outside of just, the digital platform and the changes that we were making for that experience.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So sounds like you cleansed. You cleansed your knowledge base, you modernized it, you updated. It sounds like you also created a process where the knowledge base was better informed now through the people who are actually answering the questions and providing the support.
Absolutely.
So that your self-service just continues to get better and better.
Yes, for sure. And again, really just bringing it full circle. Again, making sure that that we are just aligned in lockstep in terms of the information that we're providing, whether it's through chat or through our FAQs, or if it's through an actual agent interaction, which if it has to go back to email, because that's something that we are still doing until we have this full SDK integration, that we keep it within the app. Making sure that it all matched and that it was, consistent across the board. And I think just the data too, and that was another big piece, is digesting. We had so many options at our fingertips now, and we're still working through it. But what does success look like for us, and measuring and kind of re-looking at our KPIs. We have some automation goals, but also really looking at, something else really important for us and how we measure success is the feedback that we're hearing direct from our customers. And so we use a variety of different channels to pull that information into. So, we've got our customer satisfaction score that we use, after that kind of chat bot experience. But another piece that we've been using for several years at Quotient, and we integrated to keep that, just because of the value and the benefit that it provides, is NPS, and so the Net Promoter Score, and being able to, have very high level data in terms of just general feedback, but then also the opportunity for our customers to provide that additional feedback to them. What's working, what's not. And then also having a process with our agents to follow up and take that full circle back with the user. So if we didn't get a great score, we didn't get great feedback, really closing that feedback loop to try to turn that poor experience into a positive one, to again retain their loyalty and usage within our products.
Got it. So you touched on a couple of things that I actually would love to connect together. One was CSAT or NPS, which is, how do customers really feel about the experience that you just provided to them? And then you talked about chatbots. And I think a lot of customer service professionals wonder to themselves, when you introduce, if you remove the human element of the interaction and you introduce a bot, what are the potential unwanted ramifications of doing that, of no longer providing that human touch? What's been your experience as you think about those KPIs?
And a great question, and that's something that we're looking at intently now, because we're able to see and parse out what's working with the bots and what's not. There's a lot of abandoned cases, right, or bots, meaning that we've lost a user. Either they just decided that they don't want to engage with us anymore, or maybe we resolved their issue, but we don't know. And so it's really trying to understand that information too, because I think, again, going back to how I prefer to engage, I do like human interaction. I do want to sometimes not necessarily speak on a phone to a person, but chat with the person who can in real time, that I'm confident can resolve my problem. And we're still working through that. I think that is something that we are leveraging the data that we have to really assess, and the feedback that we're hearing from our users, and to kind of put that puzzle together to figure out what is working and what's not. Because we know that there's frustrated users who don't want to interact with a bot, but the good thing is we're not taking that option away for that agent, that human interaction. it's there if they need it. We make sure that it's kind of hidden a little bit because we obviously want to push more self-serve as much as we can, but we still have the same number of agents who are there to support the users as they need. But it, it's definitely something that, we thought long and hard about. And I think that's what I'm excited to be able to extend just this chat experience or the bot experience that we have right now for the live chat. So for certain issues that are coming in more complex until we have, some of our API integration and pulling in that user history and activation data and all of that, to be able to, get a certain amount of information up front and then have an agent interact live with the user at that point, to be able to connect and resolve the issue, hopefully within a couple of minutes.
Yeah, well, that's a great goal to have. Interesting about just observing what works with bot interactions and what doesn't. One of the learnings that we've observed with many of our customers who've deployed bots for different use cases. So getting a refund, recovering an account, for example. One of the things we learned actually surprised us, which is bots achieve higher CSAT scores dealing with refund issues than humans do. And
perfect for our space too.
right. And you would wonder why, because it almost feels it feels illogical, which is, I would want that human touch to give me a refund. And it turns out that oftentimes when you're looking for a refund, the answer is no. And when the answer is no, it's actually better received when a bot says no than when a human says no. And I think that says a lot about, what a human interaction means to the user, to the consumer, and what expectations they have once you've connected with them personally. And if you have to deliver a negative message, it's actually better delivered by a bot. So that was
absolutely, and it makes sense. And I think that's something too that for us, we're almost not even to that point yet, right? Because, we're still a couple months in from launching our app, which is again a totally new experience for our users, and some who have welcomed it and some who are still trying to welcome it. And so the first part of our kind of our launch and our strategy was to make sure that we were able to retain them as users, that this wasn't going to scare them off, or this wasn't, especially then all of a sudden we're, used to have this form of contact us, fill out these key pieces of information, and, somebody will get back to you, within a couple of days, sometimes depending on our volumes. So, we changed so much, but we wanted to make sure that out the gate, our focus was, on really helping our users to navigate through this new app experience. And making sure that they still know that all of these ways to save money are there, and there's even actually better ways for them to do that. One of our goals going forward, though, to your point, is making sure that we have the same type of support for some of these other issues, like redemption issues, or if they weren't paid out for one of their purchases, because that, especially now more than ever, across our country, that that 25-cent coupon or 50-cent or $1 means a lot, and every cent counts. And so making sure that we've got that those channels and that support that is matching kind of what we were first intending, which was just kind of the general support through the new experience.
Yeah, so let's shift gears a little bit, because we've been talking a lot about, the consumer, the customer side of this new experience that you're providing. What's it like for the agents? How's their lives changed as a result of these new capabilities you have?
So with anything new, right, I feel like at first I was a little nervous to say, okay, we've made a decision. Here's what here's the new platform that we are going to be rolling out. But out the gate, and we, again, as I mentioned, we enrolled them from the very beginning to make sure that the functionality, different things that they didn't have access to, or that, a lot of people who have been in the customer support space for a long time, what were things that worked for them previously, and making sure that we were accounting for that as well. But I will say that the overwhelming feedback that is just to have a more centralized and organized way to manage their cases. And again, that's changed, right? Because at the beginning, as I mentioned, we had thousands of cases that people weren't using the bots, or they were not successful because they didn't know how to use them and they didn't know what was going on. And so we had to quickly figure out, okay, how can we manage this? But it was systematically, doable for us to make those changes and for us to give them the tools and the, what they needed to be successful. I think just some of the other things too is just the historical view of data too. And again, I mentioned this from the other side, but the importance of just not looking at it as a case, and this is a person who has a problem, seeing all of their history. And, the good and bad, right? We have, being in the coupon, industry, there's fraud that exists and a lot of it. And so making sure too that we have the right visibility for that too. And before we had like a manual tracker that we were using to track those users. But now we can do that all within one platform. And so making sure that whether it's one agent who's handling it or somebody else, that we've got all that information. So I think for them, the biggest win has just been a solution that is actually focused and meant to support users. It's for them just as much as it is for our users too.
That's great to hear. And actually, in listening to some of the new questions you're asking yourselves, you talked about fraud. It sounds to me like you started by first just let's address the common basic challenge or issues, right? So whether it be I can't print my coupon to I need help with a redemption, and now sounds like your team is starting to get more sophisticated and
Absolutely.
peeling back things like fraud investigation. That's great.
Yeah, well, and and again, it changes their role slightly, because I think so many of the cases, it was constantly, I can't print or I can't do this. And not to say that those aren't important, relevant issues that our users were having, but it didn't require that level of intervention. And so it is really challenging our team now to think about how they're supporting our users differently, and how can we do it better, whether it's from an automation systematic way, or how can you do it now that we don't have thousands of cases coming in, now that we are able to manage our volumes. It's challenging them to take their level of support and empathy and just the overall experience really to the next level.
That's great. Leveling up. Yeah, dealing with hairier problems. So if you were to look back at just some of the lessons learned, what's the one thing you would do differently?
I would have started this earlier, I think, is one key takeaway. I do feel like we were able to meet our needs coming in at a time that we knew was going to disrupt the overall experience. But I do think that if we would have really looked at the offerings, the different ways that we could engage with our users, that if we could have done that a little bit differently and not just focused on kind of that self-serve pushing FAQs. And I say that only because I think that's been a blocker for some of our customers and our users that are coming, that has, we're hearing that didn't help. And so now they're frustrated and now they don't, want to engage with us anymore. But if we could have, saved that conversation, jumped in with a live chat or something like that, I do feel like that would have helped us address and kind of more proactively manage some of those user frustrations. So I think just, being able to have more time or resources, obviously, to kind of execute what needed to be done, just to really see the full scope, that it wasn't just rolling out one piece, but looking at it more holistically and kind of the impact that it has on both sides.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. My takeaway from that is, you would have worked faster to enable sort of two other levels of service versus just focusing at first on improving the self-service experience, because it turns out that any self-service experience is probably not going to be good enough for, some set of your users who's like, I still need more.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think, hindsight is, that gives you so much more insight, right? I know what happened with our volumes. I know where some things could have been improved. And so, I do feel like we could have done things a little bit differently to make that a little bit more, more seamless and to have more options. But again, for us, it was just, getting it launched, which we wouldn't be where we are today without it. That's for sure.
Well, it sounds like a super fun ride, Andrea. We definitely look forward to hearing about the next chapters of your journey, your journey to automation. Would love to have you back on the show if you're willing to come back and share.
Absolutely. We're just getting started. So I'm excited for the road ahead. And it'll be very different, I think, next time, right, in terms of the success that we've seen with automation and kind of that mobile in-app experience for sure.
Okay, we're gonna hold you to it. So for the audience, thank you for sticking with us. We're gonna hang around for a live audio Q&A after this session. So don't tune out. Check us out in the Q&A panel, and we'll see you there. Thank you for joining us today, Andrea.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so let's start taking some questions, Andrea. You up for it?
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with this first one. When it comes to trying to get leadership or executive buy-in on making this type of investment, right, in technology, changing processes, et cetera, any type of operational change, what tips do you have for our listeners? How do they go about driving that buy-in for resources and investment?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that, I've made many business cases and asks over the course of my career, but I have to say that this was probably one of the easier ones that I had to kind of put together and present to our expanded leadership team for buy-in across the organization. Mainly because, as a company, we are laser focused on providing that best-in-class service and products for our customers. So with that said, I did have to do, a lot of pre-work to make this as easy for the overall, buy-in for the investment and the approval, because it didn't just require, some additional cost, but also a significant amount of resources and support from our engineering and support teams. I think the other thing too is really looking at, doing some homework around some of the other solutions and vendors out there. So really went through a very thorough analysis to kind of vet what exactly we needed and what we were looking for, and then vetting that against, those other service providers that we looked at to make sure that, it was in line with what we were looking for in terms of the functionality, just the overall turnkey integration and customization opportunities, and just looking to make sure that they were going to overall be a good partner, good fit for Quotient, and what we were looking for, and to meet our strategic initiatives. I think the other part too was just really a thorough analysis of the cost impact too, and really kind of diving deep into the details of if we were to continue along the path that we were on with just that, as I mentioned and talked a little bit about, of just email based with the 10 agents that I had, what the cost impact would be for the staffing needs to account for the increase in volumes that we were expecting, versus the cost of the investment in a digital platform and solution, to kind of flatten out the resource need, any incremental resource needs that the automation self-service model would provide. So I would say, overall, if, anyone who's looking to make some sort of a change, just to really deep dive and to really, outline what exactly you're looking for, as there's several options, and making sure that the experience, overall for both sides is a good fit.
Yeah, and if we break that down for our audience, some folks might say, well, we don't have a lot of time. We need to make a decision. Things need to get better. We need low-hanging fruit or quick wins. And while being thorough is certainly the right way to approach it, the pressure of time just creeps in. So for companies that are trying to implement small things in the direction of something bigger, where do you think that their time is best spent if they have to be thorough in the research and analysis? Is there anything particular that they should start with first?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just really, outlining specifically what functionality we were looking for. There's so many different, ways to improve user engagement. And for us, we were very specific in terms of what we wanted to automate, how we wanted to elevate the support that we were providing. So it wasn't just chat, or it wasn't just kind of a live interaction or just automating FAQs. It was really a bundle, but also making sure that from an integration perspective too, that there was a match there as well, because this does, as out of the box some solutions can be, there is customization. And I think for us specifically is a great example that, we did, while we took a little while to kind of finalize and get everything over the finish line, we are in a phased kind of a launch approach. We didn't launch everything at once because we weren't able to do that. And we were still able to meet our needs in terms of, first and foremost, during the drastic change in the new release of one of our apps, was able to integrate that new experience and those options. Otherwise, there's no way we would have been able to keep up with those volumes. So that was a kind of quick fix for us. And now, going back and really kind of fine tuning and releasing additional functionality and options to continue to elevate that experience.
Andrea, related to that, you had mentioned that, if you had to do it all over again, you would have started with live chat earlier than you actually did, maybe alongside self-serve FAQs. If you were to do that, looking back, how much extra time do you think you would have needed to factor in to go live with live chat from the get-go?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a combination, right? Because the live chat would have given us the opportunity to, for those users who were existing users who had upgraded their app, and we're seeing completely new offers, a new experience and way of engaging with us, to be able to provide that just real-time feedback to them. I think that the FAQs helped, but what we saw based on what we're, kind of where we are today in terms of, the successful automation, through the bots and the FAQs, I think that we could have done a better job of that out the gate. So I think too that, we took baby steps to get to where we are now. We still have a ways to go in this overall integration. But I think, in the ideal format, it would have been a full integration and keeping everything within the app, which I think would have helped us to engage and keep those users active within the experience and not having to have them wait again for any follow-up from our agents. So just that real-time support, I do think would have minimized some frustration for just some of the quick issues that users were having for, login requirements or linking their PayPal accounts and things like that we would have been able to troubleshoot and resolve for them immediately so that they could keep engaged within the app and activating their offers and, going about their day to redeem those.
Yeah, when we're big believers in keeping the users in the app where they prefer to be to get help as quickly as possible. We have time for one more question, which is, just closing the loop. You talked about CSAT and NPS. How have you seen that change since implementing automation?
Absolutely, a big one. And this was a little bit slow at the beginning. Again, we were, just kind of trying to keep our head above the water in terms of managing the experience and the number of inquiries and issues that were coming in, and being able to field those. But over the last month, I would say, for the first time ever since I've been a part and, managing and closely tracking our NPS, saw a significant shift from a negative to a positive in our NPS score. Typically in our industry, I think I mentioned this too, we don't have, our users and our customers aren't reaching out to tell us how much they love our app or our offerings. It's usually mostly to, it's frustration or some sort of issue. So to be able to see that shift of more, the shift from detractors in terms of what we're seeing from our agent survey and feedback information, being able to have that flip to promoters was incredible. So it flipped from like 57% to promoters and 28% detractors, which was great. And usually, again, it was a much larger shift on the detractor side. And for us, this was really, just reinforcing not only the best-in-class service team that we have, but also shifting of the agent role and the value and the benefit and the impact of that self-service model and automation. And really, for the first time, hearing from our users that are being recognized for their empathy, their expertise, and their timely responses. So I think that, overall, we hope to, as we continue to, make enhancements, complete the full in-app experience with the SDK integration, that we'll be able to continue to see that shift and, continue to see that work move upwards.
Yeah, well, I mean, having an NPS score in the 20s or 30s, it sounds like, is definitely in the good category. And that is great progress if you went from having a negative NPS score. So thanks for sharing that story with us, Andrea. And again, thanks for sticking around for Q&A. For our listeners, we're going to recap this in the form of a blog. So, come back and check it out if you just want to refer to the Cliff Notes version. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.